Harry, how familiar are you with the Marvel series What If and everything about it? I imagine you're quite familiar with it.
I know that it was a series of comics that they did.
You'd be correct in all of that. And Harry, what would you say if I asked you the question? Have you ever thought about what if? But what if in the Doctor Who universe?
Well, inevitably, yes, because there's just so many different variables and characters and iterations of the same character that you can't help but make those questions because there's so many things over all of the years that the show's been running that were kind of within the realms of possibility that you just can't help but question what if?
Let's start with an easy one. What if the Ninth Doctor was in the Day of the Doctor? Have you ever pondered that question?
Oh, many times, many times. It's kind of one of the biggest what ifs for the show for me because it's something that was so close to actually happening.
Okay, so talking to the BFI in 2018, Stephen Moffat said, originally for quite a long time, I was hoping that Chris was going to do it.
Originally, and for quite a long time, we were hoping that Chris was going to do it.
Once we knew we didn't have him, it was very late in the game.
Once we didn't have him, and we were, it was, my God, it was late in the day. I mean, the smoke was...
Yeah, we kept hoping, yeah. What was it, do you think, that made him not go through that?
You'd have to ask Chris, but it certainly wasn't any resentment or hatred or misery about the show. He could not have been kinder and more gracious. I met up with him, Joyce, the first time. He said, look, I'm only meeting up with you because I want to say to your face when I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, so what do you think about that? That's kind of interesting to me that Chris... meetings actually happened and we came somewhat close to that happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's especially interesting because you hear so much. People like to really kind of embellish these behind the scenes stories of how there was all kinds of drama and conflict and stuff like that. But that sounds like it was a very cordial, very kind of understanding kind of correspondence between the two of them.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Harry, because at Rose City Comic Con in 2019, Chris did speak actually about the fact that he wasn't in the episode, and they said they approached me to be in the Day of the Doctor.
They approached me to be in that, but the BBC had still not apologised to me. And I'm from Salford, as I said before. I liked Stephen Moffat a lot. I considered it, but I wasn't... It had an enormous emotional impact on me. What happened with Doctor Who is, as the series was going out, as the series was being celebrated, I was being vilified in the press in the UK because of a statement that the BBC issued. And it caused quite a depression in me, actually, that year, while everybody was going, Doctor Who's great, he's gone. Because they kind of smeared me and told lies about me. So when it came along, I did speak to them. I didn't feel that what they were asking me to do did justice to the Ninth Doctor.
Yeah, it was very clearly not a personal thing between Moffat and Chris, or it was very much more clearly something between the BBC as a whole and Chris.
So far, what's your readings on this? What's your taking away from the fact that we did come quite close to actually having him in the episode?
Yeah, and it's obvious. It sounds to me, especially what with Moffat said there, if the Ninth Doctor had been in the Day of the Doctor, it would have been a completely different story. Obviously, Moffat himself says it wasn't the Ninth Doctor who destroyed Gallifrey, so the whole thing with kind of the moment and the War Doctor deliberating over whether or not to destroy Gallifrey, they wouldn't have just been a case of swapping out John Hurt with Christopher Eccleston. Obviously, with the conception of the War Doctor, everything surrounding that and the story all came from that. So I feel like we would be dealing with an entirely different story, perhaps not even about the destruction of Gallifrey. Or if it was, it would be something being handled incredibly differently.
You mentioned there about the whole moment thing, and there was actually some leaked storyboards from the original concept of the Day of the Doctor, which featured the Ninth Doctor. So the script in the storyboards just refers to her as Raggedy Girl. The moment is just a little girl, like almost just a child, which made me sort of think, do you think there could have been a possibility that that later would have been revealed that that little child was just a projection of a young Rose Tyler? Yeah, so in the storyboards that I've leaked, it's actually depicted slightly differently how the incarnations of the Doctors meet. The Ninth Doctor would have got to meet the 10th Doctor before the 11th Doctor met the 10th Doctor, if that makes sense. Do you think, if you could pick now, would you like to keep what we currently have with John Hurt's War Doctor, or would you like to have seen an alternate reality version in which Eccleston did appear in this episode?
Alternate reality in a heartbeat, for several reasons.
Really?
First of all,
okay, go for it.
The main one, which is kind of a canon thing, and I'm kind of the first person to say canon doesn't really matter, but the first reason is that would mean the War Doctor wouldn't exist, and I have nothing against the War Doctor. I think there are arguments made that it's interesting conceptually, but also, I don't know, I feel like it's much cleaner without the War Doctor. I mean, Moffat said it himself that all these people with tattoos of the Doctor lineage would suddenly need to fit one in between 8 and 9. And also just kind of, I'll talk about this probably more in depth when we eventually get to talking about Day of the Doctor. But John Hurt does a great job, but you can kind of tell, especially in his performance in comparison to David and Matt, that he's not as familiar with the role of the Doctor. It doesn't feel quite, to me, as embodied as it is with Tennant and Matt. They're very much fully in the role and come from the role. And to have had 3 Doctors who had all had, 10 years as the Doctor and are all equally fully comfortable and taking ownership of that role, I think would have just been better to watch. And it would have been much lesser of a fact that in the David Doctor that we have, it feels it's very much, there's a real back and forth between Matt and David. And then I guess in a sense, John Hurt's War Doctor is almost a straight man, kind of countering that. Whereas I feel like if it had been kind of an equal 3-point trio of Doctors all at each other, which I feel like it would have been with Chris, it would have been much more interesting.